Andrew Lowney, the author of Entitled, The Rise and Fall of the House of York. That was the book that started the downhill slide, not only for Andrew and Fergie, but because of the way they failed to respond adequately, also for the royal family. The royal family is in crisis about this. Yes, welcome, Andrew. You saw the Daily Mail today, echoing what you and I said yesterday, and I think several times last week. This is now getting a bit ridiculous because, as we discussed yesterday, the allegations against Andrew, the former Prince Andrew, without in any way undermining the seriousness or underrating the seriousness of the charges against, or the accusations against Peter Mandelson, are worse. You know, that we have lots of emails where he, according to the Epstein files, he immediately received emails, sent financial information, secret British financial information to Epstein and other of his rich cronies. And also, as Gordon Brown says, 90 flights came in from America, the Lolita Express. Jeffrey Epstein apparently had a fleet of private jets, not just one, and on these jets were his sex-trafficked women, some of whom allegedly went straight to the palace to see Prince Andrew as he was then. These are serious, very serious accusations on two fronts. The evidence is there for us to see in the Epstein files. Why on earth have the police still not announced an official criminal investigation into this guy?
Well, it's a good question. And I think, you know, the argument is that they want to get their ducks in a row, but I think the ducks are all there in plain sight for everyone to see. And they have, to be honest, for a long time. I mean, a lot of this stuff was in my own book 6 months ago. I mean, there have been stories in the press going back years and they didn't do anything. And there are a whole series of other occasions. I mean, he couldn't explain £1.3 million he'd got in a high court case in 2022. There are stories that appeared of him taking bribes, introducing water companies into Kazakhstan, a Greek water company. So, I mean, everyone has been trying to look the other way. And I agree that it has come, you know, it is a time when they have to kind of get a grip on this. I know parliamentarians are asking questions. I mean, we've clearly had the intervention of Gordon Brown. Stephen Parkinson, the head of the Crown Prosecution Service, has said that no one is above the law. But it's the same old story, that what they do in public and actually what happens in private is very different. And I agree, as you said, the royal family have not dealt with this very well. I mean, I think he's dragging other members of the family into it. We talked before about how I believe other members of the family are complicit in protecting him still and have not been completely open about what they're doing. So this is a crisis they brought on themselves, and they've allowed it to get worse and worse.
Now, apologists for the police, and this has been pointed out to me, and I do understand what they're saying. You know, if you are a copper and you are closing in on the possibility of charging or announcing a full criminal investigation into the King's brother, that is serious stuff. And you better be sure of your case before you proceed. I get that, you know, and I have no problem with the police perhaps being a little bit more careful about the King's brother than they might be about, you know, ordinary citizens. That said, the same caution, the same carefulness was, I'm sure, and should have been applied to the criminal investigation against Peter Mandelson. The allegations against Mandelson and Andrew are uncannily similar. And yet the police took, I think it might have been less than 2 days before they decided, yes, we have enough evidence to make this an official criminal investigation. So they were pretty quick off the mark with Mandelson. On the same kind of basis of evidence they've taken now, I think it's getting on. I think they could have charged, or they could have launched an investigation a week ago. So in other words, they're dragging their heels, I think, because he's a member of the royal family. I think there is definitely now an argument that what we're dealing with here is traditional police deference towards the royal family.
Yes, I think there is some of that. I mean, remember with the Burrell trial that actually the police did want to investigate, and that was shut down by the Queen suddenly remembering the last minute that she'd allowed Burrell to take this stuff. But various police careers suffered as a result of that. I mean, my worry now is that Andrew may well do a flit and not face justice. I mean, he's hidden away in the Sandringham estate. One doesn't know what he's doing. And he is a flight risk. And I think until they were mounting sort of dawn raids on Peter Mandelson's homes. Nothing seems to have been done in terms of looking at Royal Lodge or now what may have moved to Norfolk. I think my understanding is that some of this material may actually have been destroyed, and that there may be a case for perversion of the course of justice as well.
Dear me. I mean, with the other problem is, and again, you and I talked about this yesterday, is I'm detecting now that the royal family, I'm trying to work out how to phrase this diplomatically, but undiplomatically, they are hiding behind the convenient cloak of an imminent police investigation. So apologies for the royal family. I heard Dickie Arbiter, former royal press officer, on this station earlier today. I was saying, well, the thing is, the king can't really talk. He can't really do anything because he doesn't want to affect a possible police investigation. Well, first of all, I don't think he should be hindered by that until the police announce the police investigation. You shouldn't be holding his counsel because potentially the police might launch an investigation. So there is that. And secondly, I just don't think it's good enough. There is something that the king could say to the nation that might help this situation. He doesn't have to be specific. I certainly think he needs this time to actually mention his brother, but he needs to clear the air, just like the Queen did. You remember when the royal family sorely misjudged the mood of the nation after the death of Diana. The Queen was dragged kicking and screaming onto TV to make a speech, and it did very much diffuse what was becoming a tense anti-monarchy situation. They're in exactly the same predicament now, and I think the king, if he's got any sense, will work out a way to talk to us all, to address the nation, don't you think?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing he could say is that he will arrange for all the people who accompanied Andrew in his travels, the police protection officers, the valets, the equerries, the secretaries, to make themselves available to the police and to tell the police everything that they know about those travels. They would have seen things which would have been reported back, I'm sure. I think we need that he should say that all the internal correspondence will be shared with the police, all the people who came and complained about Andrew to his mother and her private secretaries. All that material will be shared with the police. I'm afraid I'm not convinced that what is happening in public and what is happening in private are the same. And I think perhaps he could explain why police protection officers like Paul Page have received letters reminding them of their obligations of confidentiality at a time when these people should be allowed to testify about what they saw.
I'm wondering, Andrew, if perhaps the police are slightly reticent in these circumstances because, the job of a royal protection police officer, a detective, is kind of difficult. They do officially have to accompany their charge, whichever member of the royal family they are protecting. They're supposed to accompany them literally everywhere to know where they are at all times. Now, I think that probably plunges them into difficult situations with someone like Andrew.
Yes, but if you talk to people like Di Davis, sorry to interrupt, yeah. I mean, who's former head of Royal Protection, I mean, they do have codes about what they should be reporting, and if there is criminality, they need to report it. So I don't think there's any problem there. I mean, they report actually to the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, and we've heard nothing from Mark Rowley about this. So, I mean, again, he could be sending out signals. Yeah. About what should be happening. So I'm afraid there's an awful lot of smoke and mirrors going on here.
Did you share, I mean, despite this lethargy, these delays on this case, I mean, do you share my belief that surely within the next couple of days, some point this week, this working week, they will announce a full criminal investigation? If not, if they don't, I think we're being let down. Look at all the evidence out there. You can't just brush this under the carpet.
Well, I understand that they are taking it seriously. I mean, so maybe we just have to be patient. But I think there's another side to this. I mean, people have been calling for a parliamentary inquiry into his time as a trade envoy. And it's not just Andrew. I mean, it's all the people who enabled and protected him for many years, who knew about the problems and covered up. I think I talk about the story of Andrew putting the bills for his masseurs on the taxpayer's tab, and that being approved by his bosses, by people who are traveling with him. You know, I'd like to see the former ambassadors in Azerbaijan and Kazakhstan and Libya and China and everywhere else where he was doing business on oath, having to testify about what they saw or didn't see, and how they helped him. They were shoehorning in meetings for him for people like David Rowlands as business associate. I'd like to see the former heads of UKTI. These people wouldn't talk to me. They said they weren't interested. Well, I think maybe the National Crime Agency and the Parliament might be interested.
Absolutely, Andrew. And also, I would like to see Fergie needs to be seriously interviewed, not necessarily just with a view to her former husband's case. Her activity, I think, sailed probably still does sail very close to the wind, and questions are now being asked of Eugenie and Beatrice, the two princesses, you know, who I think were much more intertwined with their parents at nefarious activities than we have so far been told.
Absolutely. I've been saying that for months. No one seems to want to believe me. There's a huge PR campaign out there, but they certainly are very involved.
I believe you, Andrew. Listen, it's great to have you on the show always. Let's talk again as soon as we can. Andrew Lowney there with the latest developments on the former Prince Andrew saga. It is getting ridiculous. Don't you think it's time that the cops announced a proper investigation? I mean, they don't drag their heels about Joe Soap like this. You know, if they were after you or me and there was similar evidence out there, we can see it in the Epstein files. Trust me, you know, we'd probably be in Wormwood Scrubs by now, but we'd certainly be dragged in, had our collar felt and be interviewed. Andrew needs to be interviewed under caution. He doesn't need some sort of perp walk and handcuffs and all that sort of thing. No one's suggesting that. He presents himself at a police station and is interviewed under caution and informed that he is under official criminal investigation by the police. Let's talk to women's rights campaigner Kelly J. Keane. Well, we're used to all this nonsense, Kelly J, but I mean, this is ridiculous. You know, telling blokes who work at the Bank of England that they can come in wearing high heels and full makeup. That's going to turn the Bank of... I mean, the Bank of England's been doing a lousy job for quite a few years. But this will turn it into an utter laughing stock, won't it?
Well, you just wonder why they've done it. Like, oh, how would we improve this workplace for people? Well, you know, let's get men in like clown makeup and some big shoes. It doesn't make any sense. The only sense it makes really is that they probably have a trans staff network or an LGBT staff network that's decided that they want to exert some power in the workplace, and this is what they've chosen to do. But for everybody else working there, I don't want to work with people who are coming in work in their fetish gear, and that's what I firmly believe a man in stilettos is doing. He's coming to work in fetish gear. Are we going to have pup masks? Maybe a furry or two at the Bank of England? I mean, why not?
I'm sure that's going to happen. I mean, this comes after guidance that the Bank of England was issued to staff on how to be inclusive of transgender colleagues, which included referring to them by, and I quote, I don't know what these things are, neo-pronouns in place of traditional pronouns such as he, she and they. In other words, not of traditional pronouns, in place of the correct pronouns, he, she and they. Examples of what the bank mean include, I don't even know how to say this, it's XE, XEM, XYR, so Xim, Shim, Rie. The other one is ZE, HIR, HIRS, so Z, her, whose, and the other one is E-I-E-M and air. A-M ear. Do you think this will improve efficiency at the Bank of England, this sort of pronoun circus?
100%. If you're focused on this stuff, I do think it really does, this is probably not a word, unprofessionalize a workplace. I do think, like, I worked a long time ago, and then I had kids, and then I've just done this. But I worked a long time ago, and I was one of the many women in full suits, sometimes 3-piece, but I would wear a full suit. And I think by the time I stopped working, maybe early 2000s, I think there was just such a relaxation of attire, full stop, which I think makes the workplace less productive, certainly places like teaching. And the Bank of England's one thing, but we know that this sort of nonsense, gosh, I was very polite with that word, this nonsense is in hospitals and police forces and state-funded institutions and schools. And, you know, there are some people that are going back to school after the half term, and their male teacher will decide that he's a woman and he'll come back in a dress. So the Bank of England's one thing, and I think they should cut it out and focus on their work. Please, thanks very much. But the rest of the places, I think, are far more concerning.
A Bank of England spokesman said the bank's mission is to maintain monetary and financial stability. I don't know how well it's doing on those fronts, but anyway, I'll start that again. The bank's mission is to maintain monetary and financial stability. As an employer, we follow the relevant laws. You know, I know our laws can be a bit mad now. Judges are all left-wing lunatics these days, but I cannot believe that if the Bank of England banned men from wearing high heels to work and makeup, that would be against the law. Can you?
No, I don't think so. It just, like, where does that go? If you're saying that they can wear stilettos, are we honestly thinking that the Bank of England is keeping some female-only spaces for women? You know, toilets and places that a woman might need to go and be in just a female-only space? I doubt it very much. I would imagine this is the tip of the iceberg for the sort of behaviour that is acceptable in the Bank of England when it comes to women's rights, because that seems predominantly men's rights. And the idea that a so-called trans woman, so a man pretending to be a woman, can also have a beard, well, yeah, that's what men have.
And it doesn't look very good when they've got dresses on and all that, let's face it. I mean, it's just like Alice in Wonderland stuff. It's absolutely crazy. You know, I know you agree with me. I mean, if you're a bloke or you want to wear dresses and high heels and makeup, knock yourself out. I don't care. Enjoy yourself. But I'm not sure that, you know, if you're like that, if that's what you get off on, that you should be allowed to go to work like that, particularly in an austere organisation like the Bank of England. It's crazy, I think.
I went shopping the other day, and I went in a very well-known, very expensive, high-end store, and I didn't buy anything, obviously. But
couldn't afford it.
The makeup counters are absolutely full to the brim of men in makeup and wearing dresses. And look, I just think, do whatever you want at home, but I don't want to have to participate in somebody's delusion. I don't want to have to walk around pretending I feel anything but uncomfortable when there are men in women's clothes, because I think pretty much always, and we'll be safe and say about 99% of the time, I think it is a fetish, and I don't want to be part of it. I don't want to see it. Thanks very much.
Yeah, and what you mentioned earlier, this is what disturbs me about it. I mean, you know, as I say, I really couldn't care less. Whatever makes you happy, do it. You know, I'm a libertarian in that respect. But when I see guys walking around in high heels with makeup all over them, I'll tell you what makes me uncomfortable about it is this. I'm not uncomfortable at all about them doing it, but it's their motives. Why are they doing it? And if it's for sexual satisfaction, if it's for fetish reasons, that makes me uncomfortable.
I think as a woman, I have quite high sort of radar for motives. I think many women do. I think it's in our DNA. It's helped us survive all these years, and it helps keep us safe. And I think, David Beckham years ago wore that sarong. I don't think anybody thought for a minute, thought he was a woman, or he enjoyed making women feel uncomfortable. That isn't really how I gauge most of these men when I come across them. There is a layer of kind of risk. You feel slightly heightened in your discomfort. So I think for women, we automatically see more risk with those men, and it does make us feel uncomfortable. So, don't knock yourself out at home. And, maybe do actually knock yourself out at home, and then just don't come out into public in that attire. That would be great.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand about women. It's far more important for biological women. But trust me, there's a few of us biological men around who, I'm very, modern about all this. I just really don't care what you do with your own life. But there's something slightly awkward about men who dress up in full women's gear. They make men uncomfortable as well. But if they want to do it, fine. But maybe not at the Bank of England.
Hello, how are you, Kev?
I'm okay. You were telling me earlier, though, when Suella was announced as Education and Equalities,
yes,
she got quite a cheer. But when Robert Jenrick was announced earlier as the key position of potential future Chancellor of the Exchequer, not such a big cheer.
Yeah, it's very interesting, isn't it? It's kind of battle of the Tories. I mean, during the questions after with the press, Nigel said, well, I took the sort of first front bencher and then I took the best back bencher. And he was kind of saying that reform has shut up shop for any future defections from the Tories. And he was saying, there's very, very, very few people that I would take now from that party and that would make it through my process. So I think he's almost acknowledging that their popularity has been somewhat hit by all these defections. And I agree with what you just said out of the studio kind of before the show about the fact that, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, about the fact that it's quite a lot.
Cut the swearing out, all right?
but it's quite a big deal to put these two defected Tories in these positions. I mean, people like Lee Anderson, like Sarah Pochin, who are more original reformers, were not given those coveted shadow positions today, and that was quite interesting.
Yeah, I think, clearly you still got Danny Kruger, you still got Lee Anderson, Sarah Pochin, of course, who I'm sure will get key roles, but of course he's obviously doing it drip, drip, drip. If I was him, I might not have announced two Tories today. I might have put Sarah in the mix and maybe saved Suella for another day, but, who am I? Anyway, you were at this event, this launch, this announcement today, and you put together a sort of package of the key moments that unfolded this morning as Nigel Farage announced the first members of his potential future cabinet. So here's Samara's report.
Well, we are at Church House over in Westminster, and behind me is a pretty dramatic setup by Reform UK. They are set to announce their shadow cabinet. Who knows what this will involve? Just last week, Farage told me in an exclusive interview that he would not be putting anyone in his shadow cabinet who had previously failed at those positions. So, we're not going to probably see a Suella Braverman as Home Secretary, but who knows who we will see as Home Secretary, which will be a very influential position in a reform government that promises to stop the boats. I've got Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer behind me. That's also going to be announced. So we've got plenty of different announcements here as Reform prepares to form the next government.
We're looking for is genuine experience, but perhaps we can actually bring back to the world of business and energy somebody at the top of this department who's done well himself in the real world. So please welcome to the stage our head of BTE, Richard Tice.
Using the joy of our very valuable energy treasure, oil and gas, offshore, onshore, and having the courage to get rid of the madness of what we've politely coined net stupid zero.
But taking on the very responsible and important role of Shadow Chancellor is Robert Jenrick.
Well, thank you, Nigel, and I didn't keep you waiting this time. Look, we all know that our economy isn't working.
And Zia Youssef will take on the role of Shadow Home Secretary.
If you are in this country illegally right now and you are watching this, I want to be crystal clear. As Reform's Home Secretary, I will ensure that you are deported from these lands.
And not only will Suella Braverman take on education and skills, something that's been ignored for too long, but she will also take on equalities under this brief, which of course means the world of DEI.
Social and gender transitioning will be absolutely banned in all schools, no ifs, no buts.
Well, Shadow Prime Minister Nigel Farage basically announced that Richard Tice will be revolutionising energy in the United Kingdom. Robert Jenrick will be clutching the nation's chequebook. We've got Zia Youssef will be protecting our borders and doing deportations, potentially en masse. Wow, that was an interesting shadow cabinet review. There seemed to be some sort of fracture between how all the top 5 were feeling about each other, something palpable within the room. But for now, it's no longer a one-man band for Reform. This is their shadow cabinet.
Yeah, what was the mood like there? Good report, Samara. What was the mood like there? Because, as we say, I'm sure there's a strategy that the other big names in the party will be announced fairly soon for different roles. I mean, there's all sorts of departments that are not yet spoken for. You know, sure. I'm thinking of DEFRA. Well, foreign. The Times today, any chat about Nadhim Zahawi, because the Times today are suggesting that Nigel might be lining him up to be Foreign Secretary. That isn't going to go down well.
I don't think that will go down well, unfortunately. I mean, I think, interestingly, there were quite a few questions from the press about some of Nadhim's comments on a competing radio station a couple days ago, where he spoke about seeing someone who was tired in the street and the effect that that had on him. And I think it was more of a bigger conversation about crime, but it didn't go down very well. So I think it's very plucky, though, of someone like Farage to go and put someone like Zia Youssef as Shadow Home Secretary when Zia Youssef isn't even a sitting MP currently. I mean, this is really ambitious behaviour, but the actual vibe within the auditorium was very interesting. I think you have to be there to kind of gauge these sort of things. And
Explain. What do you mean by that?
Well, you could see that Zia and Jenrick were definitely... they haven't, let's say, repaired their friendship, or they haven't really made amends. You know, they were barely looking at each other. I mean, Zia went on an absolute tirade about the Boris wave and migration. And this is obviously all stuff that happened under Jenrick's watch. So there are a lot of things that definitely weren't cohesive in terms of the message that the Fantastic Five would like to put forward. But I think in terms of reform strategy, it's an interesting one. But Farage was in a very sort of jacked up mood today. I think some of the Rupert Lowe announcements over the weekend, some of the Habib
He's rattled, isn't he? You could tell that.
He was rattled.
You could tell.
He was
from
snapping
Farage,
at journalists.
He really snapped about Rupert Lowe, didn't he?
He really did.
Went off on one. Yeah.
Another journalist from the FT tried to make a comment about the fact that all 5 of those people standing on that stage went to ritzy private schools, and you know, why should they be? Well, why should someone like Suella be schooling us on the state education, and do any of them send their children to state schools? And he really went hard for that journalist. Yeah, he went kind of Trump style, not answering that. That's a silly question. Why did you put this on your front page? This and that. And I can understand. I mean, Farage has been getting it in the neck for years from the press. I can understand why he's like that. But you can see that there was something a little bit different going on behind the scenes with him today. And the Shadow Cabinet announcement, yeah, some went down well. I think Suella's a great scalp for them. But Jenrick, him as Chancellor, I mean, his sort of knowledge in the private sector is him being the manager at Christie's. I don't really think that that gives you any sort of weight to become be in charge of the purse pocket of the country. I think it's a very strange appointment, and it seems more like a sort of favour, in my opinion.
Yeah, you now tend to sense that part of the deal of Jenrick defecting from the Tories would be, well, I won't come unless you give me Chancellor.
Yeah.
Because everybody thought Richard Tice would be Chancellor, a very talented man, very successful businessman, you know, so who understands finances, who understands the economy from working in the real world around it with his very successful business. So a lot of people thought Tice would get that, but Jenrick's got it. And you're right about that. You know, Farage has got to be careful. You know, the thing about, you know, the Westminster, you know, public school, Oxford and Cambridge syndrome is the sad truth is a lot of very talented people go to public school, and because they're clever, they go on to one of the two best universities in the country, Oxford or Cambridge. So naturally, you're going to get these people in high positions in Westminster, but the public get fed up with it. They get fed up with it, and so I think Farage is going to have to be careful about not appointing too many public school educated Oxford graduates. You've got to be careful about that. Now, the allegations against the former Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor as he is now, are reaching some kind of fever pitch. I mean, these are very serious allegations that he used Buckingham Palace as a brothel, where he received girls who had been sex trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein, his pedo pal, flown in, especially from America, transported to the palace for the then Prince Andrew's entertainment. So he stands accused of obviously his alleged financial misdemeanors, which could be stronger than that. The fact that in the Epstein files it looks as if he was forwarding confidential British information, emails and dossiers to Epstein. He also forwarded confidential information to his friends, the Rowland family, the bankers, David Rowland and his son, Jonathan Rowland, particularly about the Iceland financial crash, which deft financiers could cash in on. Andrew actually asked for a full government report on what was going on in Iceland, and immediately sent it on to the Rowlands. All of this is really serious. So sex trafficking, it could be charged with, some lawyers say, prostitution. Sex trafficking, prostitution, selling secrets. It is now ridiculous, and the King has got to do something. We understand it's difficult because the police may soon announce a criminal investigation into his brother. If not, why not? But the King is looking more and more like a fox caught in the headlights here, like he's paralysed and doesn't know what to do. And this is a massive crisis for the royal family, maybe existential. What do you think His Majesty should do, Angela?
Well, I did think that he ought to make something as a speech for us, because we're absolutely devastated by such a thing. And I think that something from him would be a very good thing to do, but I don't think he wants to somehow. But I think in a way it was like his mother, the late Queen, when she talked about COVID. I know there's nothing incomparable about that, but we were all very worried about this, and we all sort of started not liking the royal family. So she came along and she was very nice about it all. The same about Diana. When she died, we were saying, what's she doing? She's not coming for us. And this is another one of those, but by far the worst, because it's too disgusting to imagine. But it's really in writing now that Andrew has done all these things. You can't say, oh, I can't remember, I don't think so, I don't know anything about it. He can't get away with it like that. And also, the police have got to do something about it. I think that he still can't get to, if he doesn't agree to go to America, they can't actually have sort of discussion about these things. But I think they ought to stop that, change the law, and he's got to go over there. And I think we've got to have absolutely nothing left of him. It's just too disgusting to speak. And I think that in a way it's to get his own back. I can't see anyone with any heart who would go through some of these things. Yeah. But he's actually furious that he wasn't made king, even though he wasn't the heir to the throne. He didn't like Charles, he's never liked Charles, and he wanted to be
doesn't bear thinking about, does it? And there's another more sleaze emerging from the Epstein files, a email between a journalist at the New York Times and Jeffrey Epstein, which seems to confirm the allegation, which of course Andrew denies, that he did have consensual sex with Virginia Giuffre, or Virginia Roberts as she was then, when she was a very young Epstein girl. Yeah. Not underage, important to stress, but very young. So, you know, I mean, nobody believes Andrew when he says he's never met her anyway, so that's a piece of nonsense. But what I'm getting at here, Angela, is I think the nation is in urgent need of the air being cleared here, and the King needs to somehow work out a way to respond to that, just as the Queen did way back when Diana tragically died. Yeah, exactly. She realised, oh my God, we've got this wrong. She made a speech. The same deal with COVID. She made a speech. The King has got to get off his high horse and make a speech to us, don't you think?
Yeah, I do. I think he has done something by saying that he will help the police and he will be with the police as much as he can. Probably he doesn't know anything about what her son, has done, but it would be something. But actually, that's not enough. He can't just do that to say, I will help the police. I think he's actually got to stand up there and work one out and apologise, even though it's not his fault. But somehow, with the staff, I think it's absolutely appalling that they didn't know that they couldn't stop him going into Buckingham Palace with girls when the Queen wasn't there. I mean, it was disgusting. Do you know what they said? They used to say when they had somebody there, and they said, Mrs. Windsor will arrive shortly. Please let her in and show her up.
Yeah, that was what, and that was allegedly one of Epstein's sex trafficking victims. Yes. They and Andrew arriving at Buck House, and Andrew using the code name Mrs. Windsor, which is in itself offensive. I think the Queen will be spinning in her grave about all these revelations. I mean, I think she knew that her favourite son Andrew was not perhaps, you know, a saintly knight in shining armour, but I don't think she realised he was allegedly this depraved. The police have got to get their skates on, the King has got to get his skates on, and I always find, you know, I always feel when the royal family get into these kind of crises, they're communications people, they assume great deference on the part of all of us. How could we possibly think this of our royal family? But no, there are moments, you just explained two of them and we may be at the third now, where the British people actually rise up against the royals when they don't think the royals are doing their job properly. And right now they don't. And I'm not sure Charles and his communication team are across the depth of feeling among the King's subjects right now.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And I even resent him having a house. I don't see why Andrew should have anywhere to stay. It just annoys me. He shouldn't have any money. I mean, he's a most disgusting man, and you can't trust him at all. You know, not just.
And the King's going to pay for him, you're going to give him a house, going to give him a staff, his own chef and his servants. Also, is going to give him his living money, you know, which will probably be 200 grand a year or something. That's not what we're looking for, Your Majesty. No. We're looking for this guy to be punished.
Yes. He's got to be punished and as soon as possible, because he is vile and he cares nothing of the nation and he cares nothing of his family, and it's all about him. He pretends he doesn't even know what the girls are, or their name or anything that he sees.
Yeah, well, and I also think, Angela, the Fergie needs to be spoken to at some length by the authorities, as do Eugenie and B, who are nowhere near as innocent as they've been trying to make out. That entire York family are on the rack, and we want answers. We need them fast. Now, your experience of the horror of Jeffrey Epstein was brief, and yet I would suggest terrifying. You were working in a barbecue restaurant in Palm Beach in Florida when a colleague asked you if you'd consider taking $200 to massage an old man. You did that. You saw him. Well, look, you take up the story. What happened?
I saw him twice, and obviously I didn't expect what happened to happen. And the second time when it escalated is when I realized I absolutely can't go back.
So what happened on the first time? I mean, my information is that both times you saw him, or the first time you saw him, you had reason to be concerned by his behaviour, but the second time it turned into, I don't want to go into too many details, but full-scale sexual assault. Would that be a correct assessment of what happened?
The first time was a full-on sexual assault. It was just not in like a violent kind of way.
So when you saw him, Ashley, for the massage, he immediately turned it into something for his own gratification. I mean, were you saying no?
This was about halfway through, and no, in that instance, I wasn't saying no. I wasn't saying anything. I was just frozen and waiting for it to be over.
So how old were you, Ashley, then?
15 or 16.
15, maybe. That's
Yes.
That's extraordinary. That is extraordinary. So in some ways, you know, you were naive. You were a kid. Somebody said, "Here's $200 in this for you," and you thought, "Hey, yeah."
Yeah. What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah. And can I ask you this then? After your traumatic experience with him the first time, why did you go back to see him again?
I thought it was a fluke. Sarah Kellen, the one that led me up the stairs, like, she was gorgeous. There was gorgeous women by the pool. I didn't really look too closely because I just felt it was rude to stare at somebody's guests when I'm in their house to perform a service. So I couldn't tell you much about the people at the pool, but my point is he's surrounded by all of these beautiful women. I thought, surely he didn't actually just want me. And I also thought, you know, he's very rich and powerful. He has a lot to lose by if this were like something that he did habitually. So I went back thinking, surely it won't be like it was last time.
And it was?
It was, except more so.
So the second time was a far more serious sexual assault?
Yes.
Just a physical sexual assault. How did you feel after the second time?
I was horrified. I realized if it already escalated to that degree, and he did the same, you know, sort of thing the second time meeting me, like, this is a very slippery slope. And
I don't know if did you tell your parents or your mother or your father about this?
And I told my high school best friend, but, you know, he's just as naive as I was. And I didn't really talk about it for years.
So you're just a little kid, really. Because I mean, I would say, if you were 25 or something, I would say, did you report this to the police? But you must have been in a state of fear.
Yeah, I just thought, we don't need to talk about this, and I will just move on like it didn't happen, which didn't happen.
But now you're talking about it because you think that, well, obviously he's no longer with us, thank God, but there are a lot of powerful men who were wrapped up in his sordid world, in his sex trafficking world. You went to his mansion in Palm Beach in Florida. You just said there are beautiful women all around the pool. And I think you said in the past that anybody who went to that house must have known something strange was going on, that this was not all above board, this was not right. Did you sense that when you went there?
No, I didn't realize that until much later, and I realized there were thousands of us, and that he had a girl brought to him at least 3 times a day. And so thinking about those 2 aspects specifically, there's no way that people wouldn't have known, or at least suspected.
But in both of your encounters with him, let's talk about the first time. You just went to see him, he was ready for his mash dance. What did he say to you?
He was asking me a lot of questions just about my personal life, what I like to do, if I had any extracurricular activities, how I was doing in school, what my home life was like, if I had a boyfriend. He got a bit more personal when it came to that, asking me what I wanted to do with my life in the future. If I was interested in massage, that he would send me to a massage school so I could get fully certified, and that he had just flown a girl out to pick up another girl that he put through massage school in Asia somewhere.
So he was sort of luring you in, which is presumably half the reason you went back. You were thinking, maybe I've got an opportunity here.
Yeah, and like I said, I just thought maybe it was a fluke that first time, that he just really needed to get it out.
Yeah. And do you... because what's interesting about what you're saying is I spoke to another victim on our show who actually went to the island, and she said exactly what you said, that he sat down with her, and that he was charming. He asked about her family, her past, how she'd done at school, what her plans for her life were. So it seems that was the way he operated, but you found him sort of ostensibly charming.
I wouldn't say ostensibly charming. I would say more charismatic.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Now you're speaking. You said that obviously you parked this and you thought you'd never speak about it, but you are bravely speaking about it now. Why have you decided to tell of your harrowing experience with this monster Epstein?
Well, after Virginia had passed away, one of us said that her voice was equal to 15 of ours. And it kind of clicked for me that, this story isn't going away, and we still have no accountability and justice. And I had a lot of time to be quiet and just sit in the shadows with all of this. But it was my turn to sort of speak up. I've gotten older, and I'm just not as afraid anymore of what people think or say.
And what about what happened to you when you were just a kid, 15, maybe 16? Did it have a lasting effect on you?
So I just started counseling about maybe a year and a half ago. So I'm really just starting to figure out the impact, at least figure it out in a way that I could explain it.
So in other words, it did have an effect on you that only now you're beginning to realise you've got something to process here. Can I ask you, Ashley, what do you feel about, our Prince Andrew, or Prince Andrew as he then was, now he's Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He's been called to testify to Congress. There's a potential police investigation here in Britain of his activities. The allegations against him are shocking. That Jeffrey Epstein was sending his sex trafficking victims across the Atlantic to see the then Prince Andrew at Buckingham Palace, where he is accused of using the palace like his own personal brothel. Now, he's just one of the powerful men surrounding Jeffrey Epstein in his heyday. Do you think that our prince, or as he was, the then Prince Andrew, should be brought to justice? Do you think he should A, testify to Congress, and B, be investigated by the British police?
Yes, A and B.
Yeah. And to explain why?
Because we deserve to know what was happening.
Yeah, exactly right, exactly right. And of course, it's clear, I appreciate you coming on, by the way. It's very brave of you, and thank you. But I assume that you've made yourself available to the authorities as well, as, you know, both of our nations, America and Britain, attempt to try and investigate what this guy Epstein got up to, because it's extraordinary, isn't it?
It really is.
Now, what Rupert was saying, as Reform UK tried to sort of say, it means nothing. What he was saying was that people around the country are getting increasingly concerned about allegedly suggestions that Reform UK are turning into the Tory party wearing a different coat. And that, the event you were at, was it yesterday, day before, when they unveiled the first of their new cabinet. You know, you had 4 announcements. Richard Tice, Deputy PM, plus business and housing and pretty much everything. Zia Youth, currently not a put forward. Generic and government until last month were senior members of the Tory party. People don't particularly like that, and Rupert Lowe is cashing on a feeling that more and more disillusioned Reform supporters might be signing up to, don't you think?
Totally. I mean, this could be potentially cataclysmic for Reform, to be perfectly honest with you, Kev. I mean, I actually didn't think that it was going to be much of a movement, but the past couple of days have proven otherwise. And it's not just because of what Rupert Lowe has been doing and what his team has been pumping out. It's actually also because of what Reform's been doing as well on the other side. So, I mean, it's interesting because when you see, you know, Rupert Lowe coming out and almost being affirmed when Nigel at that conference on Tuesday said that, you know, Rupert was saying we need mass deportations and we decided he's just got to go. Well, then what does that say about the police allegations that Zia Youssef lodged against him that then were sort of basically discarded? I mean, this is a real sign to Reform to not build people up, create these massive beasts, and then toss them out of the party, because this is what happens. This is the effect of this. And unfortunately, I don't think this is going to be the first Rupert Lowe that they produce, because looking at how much power he's just given Robert Jenrick today, who genuinely just joined the party a couple of weeks ago and is now going out against some of even Nigel's policies publicly when he was outlining his budget or his sort of proposed changes as Chancellor. I mean, you're starting to see that Jenrick's got a massive stronghold on Reform now, and I think thinks that he might be the sort of natural successor to Farage. It's quite crazy how this has all happened in the past week, Kev.
Yeah, I think there's something going on here, and basically I know that a lot of Reform supporters, now I don't want to undermine, by the way, the achievement of Nigel Farage and Reform. What they've achieved is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, for Nigel Farage to be in with more than a very serious chance of becoming our next Prime Minister, considering where he was a year ago, 5 years ago, is just extraordinary. So let's not undermine the incredible achievements of Nigel Farage and Reform UK. However, the more plausible they become as the next government, the more some Reform supporters see them as the establishment. And that's exactly what Reform supporters don't want. They want the end of the establishment. They don't want Tories. They don't want the Labour Party. So Rupert Lowe now, so traditionally Reform UK for the past few years have been the rebels, you know, outside saying we are the difference. We are the wind of change. We will smash the two-party system. We will bring you something revolutionary, something different. We're the rebels. We're the outriders. Well, suddenly they're not, are they? They look like the establishment, and the rebels The people against the establishment are, well, you know, Ben Habib, but now mainly Rupert Lowe and Restore Britain. He said that 70,000 people have signed up to join the party today. We hear Jeremy Clarkson's interested in helping them and being an MP for them. So, you know, for the Reform UK to say this is nothing, this is just tittle-tattle, I think they better not get complacent about this.
You know, I think it's really difficult because, yes, it might sound like I'm ingratiating Restore Britain, but I'm more just saying it's a symptom of the mismanagement recently of Reform. And the thing is, yes, they might have gotten 70,000 members, but obviously there was that poll by JLL yesterday that showed that only 8% of people even know who Rupert Lowe is. So that's going to be a massive issue there, because when you're door knocking and you're asking vote for Rupert Lowe, majority of people will not actually know who you're talking about unless you're on the Twitter sphere. So politically, there's a big issue there where we are unfortunately getting sucked into social media trends and not actually getting sort of the real world perspective. But then also on the other side of it, you do need to be quite sort of reflective of what's going on social media, because that is the sort of town square of the current global world. So it's very interesting what's happened here. But unfortunately, Restore Britain's policies, it's very easy for Rupert to come out now and put things out into the ether, just, you know, tweet whatever he wants to do. But in practice, I think it will be much more difficult. And unfortunately, you know, Farage has been trying to create this new brand of conservatism. He's trying to redo what the Tories failed at, but he's made some real misfires in the past couple of weeks. And that is, as you can see, has resulted in people lurching even further to the right, which, you know, it's up to the audience to decide whether that's a good thing or not.
If you think about it, you witnessed it live. It's a very strange spectacle, wasn't it? Nigel Farage saying, well, the trouble with Rupert Lowe is he's too right-wing. He's way too right-wing. You know, that's effectively what he was saying. Now, for Reform UK supporters, the optics of that are not great, are they?
No, he needs to be really careful with his rhetoric here. I think people really underestimate how sensitive his core base is and how they can easily be turned off. And we can see that in the past couple of days with how everything's been split. Now, in terms of what it means for the conservative movement, I think it's actually quite a bad thing to have a split vote. Now, a lot of people can say, oh, you know, it's not a split vote if everyone votes for Restore. That's just not going to be the case, because Farage has established a political party that has polled in the last couple of hundred polls at the top. So there is going to be a fracture that will really need to be taken care of if you want conservatism back in the country. Unfortunately, I do think some of what Rupert is doing is a personal vendetta. And to be honest, if my house had been raided by the police because of allegations from someone within a party that I used to be in, I would probably have a bit of a chip on my shoulder as well. So I just think this is the messiness of what goes on behind the scenes, and we're now seeing it presented to us publicly, and the voters are going to have to choose who they side with. But I mean, it's merely a couple of days old. You know, who knows what direction it will turn into? Who knows who will come out for and against? I think it's very much a developing story, Kev.
Yeah, it sure is. We'll watch it like a hawk. But the headline is, I think, that Reform UK would be very unwise to ignore what Rupert Lowe is up to, wouldn't they?
Yeah, they absolutely would be. But I also think that we need to be wary of some of the policies that Restore's putting out in order to grab those votes and grab those members really quickly. I mean, if you look really deeply into it, there might be stuff that you disagree with, and the audience might have some issues with it. But I'm probably just saying that because I'll be the first one to be deported if Restore get in. So maybe it is happy day.
I'd back that. I'd back that, yeah. I don't know if he's been released yet, but I don't think so. He'll be in a police office room somewhere being interviewed by detectives with a view to the fact he is under investigation for allegedly misbehaving in public office, malfeasance, misconduct in public office when he was a trade envoy for this country in the early noughties. But this must be an extraordinary experience for a man, you know, who is the king's brother, spent his entire life you know, people bowing and scraping to him. You know, he's still 8th in line to the throne. So suddenly, you know, he's had his collar felt. Let's find out, see if we can have a look into what kind of a man and what kind of reaction he'll be having today. Let's have a chat with psychologist Dr. David Holmes. Welcome, David.
Hi there.
Well, first of all, what will it be like? What would it be, in your view, like to be a person like the former Prince Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, his whole life, you know, at the top of the social scale, living in palaces, people doffing their caps, you know, everything done for him, servants, you know, very privileged life, gilded palace existence. He's sitting in a police room now being interviewed by detectives. This morning they swooped on his house, front door and back door, to make sure he didn't run out. They treated him like any other common or garden suspect. They read him his rights. Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, you are under arrest on suspicion of misconduct in a public office. You know, come with us. You know, you do not have to say anything, etc., etc. What would that be like for a person like that? That must be a really shocking experience.
It's got to be a little bit of a shock to him. This is probably the first time he's been thrown into a room with a hard bench, nothing else. Really, nothing else. That's it. You know, bit of a window which is barred, and that's it. And a door that is impenetrable and has a little spy hole. He's had a very privileged adulthood and possibly his teens. However, his early childhood may have been closer to the model, because I would imagine he would have been brought up with fair strictures as to what he can and can't do, particularly in public. But having that royal tag, having that sort of invulnerability when it comes to the strictures of society, I think he may have played his cards a little bit too wide and have actually been there when it's been not appropriate. What we don't know about him is possibly the background of other activities that may not be entirely acceptable, and certainly probably wouldn't be acceptable to the rest of his family. You could say that Charles was a fairly upright chap and pretty much a law-abiding chap. He seems to have a strong moral sense. Perhaps unlike his father, who may have perhaps had more of an influence on Andrew in terms of his flippancy when it comes to treating others as equals.
Although I think Philip was never condescending or rude or arrogant towards staff and servants. Andrew has a terrible reputation for that. Do you think, I mean, you know, Royal Protection detectives who worked with him, they just said he was arrogant, rude, impossible. Do you think that that kind of character might have emanated from the fact that he was well known to be his mother, the Queen's favourite son? I mean, is what you can see of his personality, is that classic of the spoilt brat?
It could be, you know, a primary example. Basically, the spoilt brat has this sensation that whatever they do, it will be okay, and it will be all right, and it will be seen by others as being okay and all right, particularly the parents, of course. That sense of privilege is often given to the younger child in a family, and inadvertently often by the parents, but it has a profound effect over the years, and the relations with their siblings can become quite competitive, and sometimes you could be the totally irresponsible child who sees no wrong in what they do whatsoever.
No, that's interesting, because that kind of gels with what we think Andrew is like, and it is well known that him and Charles, have never really got on. They have been at loggerheads their entire life. What about his sense of entitlement? And could it be, you know, I mean, he's well known not to be, shall we say, the sharpest pin in the pack. He's not particularly intellectual. Do you think it's because he's not clever enough to understand that he's been born into a very, very unusual position, and you know, he's not bright enough not to have abused that? Because I think he stands accused of regularly abusing his position as a kind of entitlement, as you said, a feeling he can do no wrong, that he's above the law, and an arrogance both to staff and workers and officials that he's shown all his life. Is that because he's just a bit dim, really, and doesn't really understand how to negotiate life as a member of the royal family?
No, I think he's got enough insight to realise that he's a royal and is above others. But I think he just kind of accepts it as his privilege, that it's inherent in him. He doesn't get the idea that he's playing a role. Charles gets the idea very carefully, and he plays the role of the king, and he plays it as it should be played. However, Andrew seems to want to make it his own little pattern of behaviours, which he sees as absolutely okay, no matter what he does. It's his role, it's his privilege to do that. Yeah. Whereas most people in his position have this thrust upon them, that this kind of massive encasement.
What a nightmare birthday for former Prince Andrew, Mountbatten Windsor.
Yeah, I mean, unbelievable. I mean, I was talking to Andrew Lowney earlier, and I've talked to other people about this extraordinary story. One of the most remarkable stories of my long and checkered career. Can't remember anything bigger than this. The King's brother has been arrested. He is currently in custody, being interviewed by police on charges of misconduct in a public office relating to when he was the trade envoy in the noughties. No charges yet, important to stress that. But, I mean, that it should come to this, Kinsey. I mean, you're a seasoned royal reporter, royal watcher. I mean, this isn't unexpected, but to see it actually happen, it's just shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, for years, the scandal surrounding Andrew was treated as a royal disgrace. Tonight, it has become a criminal crisis. With him now under arrest and in custody, investigators are examining whether his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein involved not just damaging associations, but the possible disclosure of sensitive government information linked to his official role abroad. Not likely what we ever assumed he would be investigated for, because we've heard whispers of much more vulgar behavior over the last few years, and accusations and payouts to Virginia Giuffre. This is no longer about bad judgment, catastrophic interviews, or just palace embarrassment. The focus has shifted to whether a senior royal may have breached the law while representing Britain. And under UK law, as I've heard you say on this program, misconduct in public office carries severe legal consequences. Authorities must now decide whether the evidence warrants full criminal charges. And if prosecutors move forward, the implications are extraordinary. What began as a royal scandal would become one of the most serious constitutional and legal threats the modern monarchy has faced. But I will say, seeing King Charles sitting front row at New York Fashion Week while the you-know-what is hitting the fan, I'm a little tickled by that. I mean,
is that where he is today? Is that where he is?
He's there right now.
You're kidding.
I didn't realize that.
Kidding. He's at New York Fashion Week watching
the London Fashion Week. I apologize.
The London Fashion. I was going to say,
London Fashion Week.
Well, I suppose, Kinsey, I mean, I share your shock at that. But that said, I suppose the King it's important for him to deliver the impression that it's business as usual, that he's going about his job, going about.
Well, no,
his
and I think he's saying you're on your own, and I love that.
Well,
I think
yeah, well,
he's
you
saying,
saw the
you
statement.
deal with it.
You saw the statement. I mean, the statement that he issued didn't mention his brother. I have learned with the deepest concern the news about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and suspicion of misconduct in a public office. He never once mentions that this guy is his brother. But he's made it very clear, and he makes it clear in this statement, which he issued about midday today, that, you know, him and the whole family are prepared to cooperate with the police. The police are going to have to interview the king, aren't they?
I mean, I truly don't believe that the king is going to have... I think the king can give them, you know, details of Andrew's travels. He can encourage anybody that has any sort of documentation surrounding Andrew during his time as a working royal. I mean, I keep getting asked, should the king abdicate? Does he have to step down? Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was never a working royal under the King Charles reign. I don't believe that this falls on King Charles. But the king probably does have access to flight logs, to, you know, itineraries for when Andrew was working as an envoy and was a working British royal, and he could provide those kind of details to the investigators. But, you know, I think I told you this already. When Tom Bower and I spoke, Tom Bower was like, these two people don't like each other. King Charles would not know a lot about what was going on in Andrew's private and personal life because they don't have anything to talk about. They don't have a lot in common. You know, the king was always so focused on this inevitable role, and Randy Andy was clearly always focused on me, what can I get? What can you do for me right here, right now?
Yeah, indeed. But in terms of his relationship with Epstein, not in terms of the potential or the accusation that he basically sold British secrets to his billionaire friend, American friend, Jeffrey Epstein, convicted paedophile. Not apart from that, 9 police forces here in Britain are now investigating allegations that he was involved in Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking operation. The former Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, no less, saying 90 flights came into this country with Epstein's girls on them, and some of them went to the palace to be entertained by the then Prince Andrew. Now,
and after Epstein's arrest, when Andrew should have absolutely knew better, when Andrew should have cut him off.
Yeah, so, you know, he's got, you know, potentially a lot more problem coming down the tracks. But what I think that the king needs to be spoken to about is this $12 million that the royal family got together to hand to Prince Andrew, as he was then, to hand to Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking victim, Virginia Giuffre, who accused Andrew of sexually assaulting her on 3 different continents. Andrew, of course, denies, can't even recall meeting her, allegedly. So he denies those allegations. But one would have to think that the police, at some point, would have to say to the king, well, why was Andrew given that $12 million?
I mean, you know, it was originally reported that the king had anything, like the king was associated with that at all. And I apologize if it's not the correct outlet that I'm quoting, but I believe it was the Telegraph over the weekend that stressed that the king in no way, shape or form was associated with that.
He says he wasn't. Yeah, so the Sun last week, the Sun newspaper, I think it was last week, published the details, or what they said were the details of the breakdown of that money that was given to Andrew to silence Virginia Giuffre. The majority of it was apparently supplied by the late Her Majesty the Queen, the late Queen Elizabeth II. According to the Sun's information, some of that money was supplied by the king. The king said, Prince Charles, as he was then, said that that isn't the case. But I do think the royal family are going to have to talk about this. Why on earth would the royal family hand a woman $12 million not to go to a civil court in New York and reveal the sordid details of what Jeffrey Epstein was up to? Why would they do that? That is a bad look for the royal family.
It is a bad look for the royal family. I think they were just trying to stop the bleeding, and what an expensive cost to try to stop the bleeding. They wanted to focus on the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, which sounds ludicrous to say out loud, that an event was more important than getting to the bottom of the truth and finding out how deep Andrew's ties were with this predator, and if there could be anything else potentially embarrassing out there. And look, it's taken years. It's honestly taken years for all of this to come out. I think that it would be in the king's best interest to address the public in some way, shape, or form. I really do. The London Fashion Week is like the antithesis of that. Like he's saying, like, you look, you're on your own, I'm throwing you under the bus. But I do think that the public would like to hear from him and hear that he's outraged and disgusted and disappointed and is on their side and believes that these people should be held accountable. But I do not blame him for that payout. We remember the stories about the friction that would happen between Prince Charles' camp and Queen Elizabeth's camp, and that we hear today against Prince William and King Charles's camp. The heir is always punching up, saying, let me have a voice. And the monarch is always saying, wait your turn. So I do not believe that the king had any sort of, say in how they navigated the Epstein situation back then.
Yeah, sure, it's a good point, and I understand what they were doing, but when Andrew said, listen, I need $12 million, they must have said why. And if he said, well, there's this woman that I've never met, and she says that I abused her on 3 different continents, so I want to give her $12 million to shut up. The royals would have surely said, well, if you'd never met her, why'd you want the money? So the question is what did he tell them at that point in order to get that money that he needed to pay off Virginia Giuffre? First of all, just as a long-standing royal journalist, royal reporter, royal biographer, your personal feelings about what you've witnessed today, because I've been around a few years, and this may well be, and I've covered, or I've been around some of the biggest stories ever, and this may well be, to my mind, the most shocking story, the most astonishing story I've ever seen.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, I've loved the royal family, and I think they do a great job, and I've been close to them, and I've seen them doing this important job for so many people, and I see again the people who absolutely want to wipe it out. But this time, it's too horrible to imagine, I think, and I really hope that it keeps going, because I've always felt that it's very important for us to have the royal family, and they do very good things for us all. But with something like this, it is such a shock, because in my mind, not only does it affect Andrew, it affects Sarah, and it affects Eugenie and his sister. And I think that in a way it's a very unpleasant taste for that. And it does upset me a great deal, really. I couldn't bear it without a royal family.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. This could be existential. It certainly is a serious problem for the king, for King Charles, and not long after waiting for God knows how long, decades and decades and decades to ascend to the throne, he finds his reign in trouble. A lot of calls for William to take over, the possibility of an abdication. Frankly, I would say that's an outside chance, but this is a serious crisis for King Charles to have to endure. And I thought his statement today, at around about midday, starting with, I have learned with the deepest concern the news about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and suspicion of misconduct in public office. You know what is missing in that first paragraph? It's the words, my brother. I think the king is in the process, or if he hasn't already done so, of just completely cutting this guy off. I think it's the only way for the royal family. Now, again, I've got to stress we don't know his guilt. He hasn't been charged with anything, but we've seen the evidence against him, that he stands accused of selling Britain down the river, misconduct in a public office when he was trade envoy. He also has coming down the track a potential investigation into his involvement into Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking racket. The royal family need to distance themselves from this man, don't they?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it does seem that he doesn't care two hoots about the country, about the royal family, about what they're doing, and about him being a part of this. And it's not necessarily because he hasn't got a job now, because that's his fault, but actually to make people feel that how you're behaving is absolutely disgusting makes a big difference, and you can't sort of warm to someone. And I think we do need a royal family, and he's just absolutely crushing it. Yeah. And I think that's a terrible thing to do. I mean, he has been very superior, and he hasn't liked King Charles, or Prince Charles. He always felt he would become a better king than his brother, who was actually the heir to the throne. So he's been nasty and unpleasant, and he was nasty and unpleasant about Camilla, nagging the Queen Elizabeth that she's not allowed to marry him. So he's not actually somebody that the king has liked very much. But the fact that he could behave so badly with no moral behavior that is understandable is shocking. But actually it seems that Sarah has been appalling as well. I read this evening that Epstein decided that he would give her the money she wanted the minute she divorced from Andrew. Now, I didn't know that. So he was actually keeping her, which is why she secretly sent letters saying, you know, you're so wonderful, please marry me. I mean, it's just shocking what behaviour. And the two girls have actually known what's gone on. I thought they didn't get involved at all. They know what's going on. And one must think, well, you know, perhaps we should take several steps back from them too.
I think there are questions that Bea and Eugenie need to answer very seriously, because you're right. You know, do you remember when the story first emerged, people going, how could Fergie take her little daughters to see a convicted paedophile 5 days after he was released from prison? And then we found out the nuance that they weren't little girls, they were 19 and 20 at the time. And don't forget...
Just the age he likes. Just the age he likes.
Yeah, but so they must have known about their parents' nefarious benefactor. Important to stress, Angela, of course, that it's not actually illegal to take money from a convicted paedophile, but should he prove to be guilty, it is illegal to sell that convicted paedophile state secrets or secret information from the British government. So the Prince or Andrew has not been charged with that yet, and has always denied any wrongdoing when it comes to the sex trafficking and Epstein's girls. But he's also being probed by 9 police forces with a view to these 90 flights that the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown talked about, of the Lolita Express, Epstein's private jet, flying girls into Britain, some of whom were allegedly taken straight to Buckingham Palace to spend an evening of entertainment and frivolity with the then Prince Andrew. He's got all of that coming down the track. It's a terrible day for him today, his unhappy birthday, but in terms of the sex trafficking allegations, things could get a lot worse for him, couldn't they?
Yes, it will also take quite a long time. All these things are going to be done quite slowly to get them sorted. And so it can go on for years. And of course, that actually has such a nasty taste in that. And it's very difficult to cope with, I think. And I worry about the king. I mean, we know that he's much better with his cancer, but it's there. And I think the stress actually can make people get ill and be very, very hard for them. He's very brave, and he can rise above anything, really, and he has done. But nonetheless, it is a very difficult thing for him to do, particularly when it's his own brother. And he also keeps thinking of his late mother, and it's very difficult to know how to behave. So that's not going to be something that will take him a couple of days. It's going to go on and on for many months, if not years.
I'll tell you what's interesting, Andrew, is the King, or Prince Charles, as he was, the Prince of Wales, when the Queen, the late Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, went to Tony Blair and said, oh, I've got this second son of mine, Andrew, you know, he's just quit the Navy and I don't know what to do with him. Can you find him a job? And Tony Blair said, how about international trade envoy, travelling the world, drumming up trade for this country? Prince Charles, exactly, Prince Charles, to his credit, said that this is a disaster waiting to happen. Prince Charles advised seriously against this, but it went ahead, and the rest now is history. The question has to be of the King is, how much did he know about what his brother was up to, potentially criminally or otherwise, if he at all knew anything. But he will have to be asked. And what I'm thinking about, I've been very sort of tough reporter all day, so the King's got questions to answer, you know, and so have B and Eugenie and Fergie, yeah, they've got questions, the whole royal family. And then I've just started to think, you know, I've started to think, you know, this guy, Andrew, what he's done to this family is absolutely appalling, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. The thing is, the King won't be required to talk in prison or anything like that. I mean, he won't be asked in any of those questions. He will have somebody else to do that for him. I don't think he's going to.
I'll tell you what I think about that, Andrew. I think that's not good enough. I've had enough of this deference. Oh, we can't interview the King. Why not? Why not?
Well, I have the deference, actually.
You do, but
yes.
Well, I don't.
I think very highly of him, and.
I don't look. Don't get me wrong. I just don't see why, if it was anyone else, the police would talk to him. Why won't they talk to him just because he's the King?
Because I think just speaking about some of the words about his brother are actually disgusting, and I think he should rise above that. I know I'm old-fashioned, but I really think that, and I feel that it's very, very hard for him. I don't know how much he knows because they're not close. So Andrew wouldn't have whispered into him, you know, what's going on. And actually the aides, which you think would do something, I think 90% of them won't, because they're scared about losing their job. Because if they say Andrew did X, and then Andrew would blow up and say, absolutely not, how dare they? It's a very difficult situation for them. I remember they did that for Harry about drugs at school, and they didn't dare say much because they thought that Charles would sack them. And I think this is the same thing, that you have these people looking after things, but actually in the end they can't really say too much because they can't trample on what you've got.
I'll tell you what, though, you know, by the way, I respect your deference. You know, I'm just not, you know, normally, I take your point, I'm just not feeling it at the moment. I've just about had enough of this. I just think they need to be treated like everyone else. And half the reason we've ended up at this low point is because of this deference they've always been shown, and their impulse to secrecy, to gather around and try and, you know, protect the horses. And something's got to change in the royal setup, I think. They've got to be more transparent and stop keeping secrets from the public.
Yeah, but they are doing much better. I mean, a year or so, 2 years ago, King Charles would never have said he had cancer. We wouldn't know what was going on. I mean, the royal family never said what was their illnesses. Queen Elizabeth.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they're getting better. You're right, they're getting better. Slowly but surely they're being dragged, kicking and screaming into the 21st century.